The second labor of Hercules, conquering the Lernaean Hydra. Hercules returned from his first labor triumphant, draped in the golden, impenetrable pelt of the Nemean lion. The villagers who saw him arrive whispered in awe, for they had thought no man could overcome such a beast. Hercules had not only slain the lion, but had also turned its invulnerable hide into armor, wearing it as a cloak and hood that made him appear both regal and terrifying. When he reached Mycenae, he was met at the city gates by a trembling messenger sent by King Eurystheus. The cowardly king, who had feared Hercules even before his first labor, was now terrified at the sight of him. Hercules' sheer presence, enhanced by his new trophy, made the king's pulse race with dread. Eurystheus refused to meet Hercules face to face, instead issuing his orders from behind the city walls. The king's voice quavered as he commanded Hercules to take on his second labor: slay the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous serpent-like creature with multiple heads that lived in the swamps of Lerna. According to the stories, the Hydra's breath was toxic, its blood venomous, and its heads seemingly immortal. When one was cut off, two more would grow in its place. Hera, who loathed Hercules and sought his downfall, had advised Eurystheus to choose this task, confident it would be the death of him. Without hesitation, Hercules accepted the challenge. He left Mycenae, the lion's pelt still draped over his shoulders, and made his way toward the swampy region of Lerna. Though his first labor had been a triumph, Hercules knew this task would demand not only strength, but also cunning. The second labor of Hercules was to slay the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous serpent with multiple heads. Each time Hercules cut off one head, two more would grow back in its place. To defeat this creature, Hercules enlisted the help of his nephew, Iolaus. As Hercules severed each head, Iolaus cauterized the neck with a burning torch, preventing it from regenerating. Eventually, Hercules succeeded in vanquishing the Hydra, completing his second labor. Hercules' journey to Lerna was long and grueling. The land grew darker and more oppressive as he approached the Hydra's lair, the air thick with the stench of decay. Villagers fled when they saw him, terrified not only of the beast that dwelled nearby, but also of the imposing figure of Hercules, who now carried with him an aura of otherworldly power. As he walked, Hercules was joined by a familiar face, his nephew Iolaus, a young and eager man who admired Hercules and sought to aid him on his quests. Though Hercules initially hesitated to accept his help, knowing the dangers they faced, Iolaus insisted. "Two minds and two pairs of hands are better than one," he said. Reluctantly, Hercules agreed. The swamp of Lerna was as unwelcoming as the stories claimed. Shadows clung to the gnarled trees, the air was heavy with decay, and the ground beneath Hercules' feet squelched with every step. Somewhere in the depths of this mist-shrouded marsh lay the Hydra, a creature whose very name struck terror into the hearts of mortals. The monstrous serpent, born of the titanic Typhon and the vengeful Echidna, had terrorized the region for years. Farmers, hunters, and even soldiers had fallen to its venomous wrath, their bodies left to sink into the dark waters of the swamp. Hercules trudged through the muck, his nephew Iolaus close behind. The young man, though brave, was wide-eyed and wary, his hands gripping a bundle of torches they had prepared for the encounter. "Uncle," Iolaus ventured, breaking the oppressive silence. "This creature, it cannot be killed as the lion was. Do you truly believe we can defeat it?" Hercules, draped in the impenetrable hide of the Nemean lion, glanced back at Iolaus. Despite the grime and weariness from their journey, his eyes gleamed with determination. "Every beast has its weakness, Iolaus," he said firmly. "Even the Hydra." The sound of water dripping and reeds rustling filled the air as they neared the heart of the swamp. A foul stench grew stronger, a sickly mixture of rot and sulfur that made Iolaus gag. Hercules stopped abruptly, raising a hand to signal his nephew. Ahead, the trees opened into a murky clearing where the Hydra's lair awaited, a dark, gaping hole in the earth surrounded by stagnant pools and bones bleached white by time. The lair was eerily still, but Hercules could feel the presence of the beast within, a weight in the air that made his muscles tense and his grip tighten around his club. He turned to Iolaus. "Stay back until I call for you, and keep the torches ready." Iolaus nodded, retreating to a safer distance as Hercules approached the cave's entrance. He called out, his voice ringing through the swamp. "Come forth, Hydra of Lerna. I am Hercules, son of Zeus, and I have come to end your reign of terror." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a sound like 1,000 serpents hissing at once filled the air. The ground trembled beneath Hercules' feet as the Hydra emerged from the darkness. The creature was more monstrous than the tales had described. Its enormous, scaly body slithered forward, glistening with swamp water and sludge. 9 serpentine heads writhed atop long necks, their jaws snapping and fangs dripping with venom. The central head, larger and more menacing than the rest, had eyes that burned like molten gold, filled with a malevolent intelligence. As the Hydra reared up to its full height, its head swayed like cobras preparing to strike. Hercules wasted no time. With a roar, he charged forward, swinging his club with all his might. He struck one of the heads, crushing it into the swampy ground. The Hydra screeched in pain, its other heads lunging at him in retaliation. Hercules dodged and swung again, severing another head with a single blow of his sword. But no sooner had the head fallen than 2 new ones sprouted from the stump, hissing and snapping with renewed ferocity. Hercules gritted his teeth as realization dawned. This was no ordinary foe. The Hydra's regenerative power made it seemingly invincible, and his usual tactics of brute strength would not suffice. The battle raged on, the swamp becoming a battlefield of mud and blood. Hercules fought valiantly, smashing heads with his club and slicing through necks with his sword. But for every head he destroyed, more grew in its place. The Hydra's venomous breath filled the air, choking him and stinging his eyes. His muscles burned with exertion, and his lion-skin cloak was slick with slime and gore. Despite his legendary strength, Hercules began to feel the tide turning against him. The Hydra's heads moved with terrifying speed, striking at him from all angles. One head grazed his shoulder, its fangs leaving a burning wound. Another lashed out and knocked him off balance, sending him sprawling into the mud. "Uncle!" Iolaus called from the edge of the clearing. "You can't keep this up!" Hercules struggled to his feet, his mind racing. He had faced many monsters, but none like this. The Hydra was a puzzle, a foe that demanded strategy as much as strength. His eyes flicked to Iolaus, then to the torches the boy held, and an idea sparked. "Iolaus!" Hercules bellowed. "Bring the fire!" Iolaus didn't hesitate. He grabbed the torches and rushed to his uncle's side. As he approached, the Hydra's heads turned toward him, sensing a new target. Hercules stepped between Iolaus and the beast, smashing his club into one of the heads and buying his nephew precious seconds. "We'll burn the stumps," Hercules explained quickly. "When I sever a head, you cauterize the wound before it can regrow." Iolaus nodded, his fear giving way to determination. Together, they launched their counterattack. Hercules swung his sword with renewed purpose, cutting through the Hydra's necks with precision. Each time a head fell, Iolaus was there with a flaming torch, pressing it against the stump and searing the flesh shut. The Hydra screeched in agony, its roars shaking the trees and sending flocks of birds fleeing into the sky. Slowly but surely, the tide of the battle began to turn. The Hydra's attacks grew more frantic as its heads were destroyed one by one. Its massive body thrashed wildly, sending waves of muck and water splashing across the clearing. But Hercules and Iolaus pressed on, their teamwork unrelenting. Finally, only the central immortal head remained. The beast's golden eyes burned with hatred as it lunged at Hercules, its jaws snapping inches from his face. Hercules dodged and grabbed the head with both hands, using every ounce of his strength to hold it at bay. With a mighty roar, he slammed the head to the ground and drove his sword deep into its neck. Though the head could not die, it writhed and twisted in pain. "Iolaus, the boulder!" Hercules shouted. Iolaus, understanding immediately, rolled a massive stone toward the thrashing head. Together, they heaved it onto the Hydra's neck, pinning the immortal head beneath its weight. The rest of the beast's body lay still, its lifeless remains sinking into the swamp. The swamp fell silent. Hercules and Iolaus stood amidst the carnage, their bodies covered in mud and sweat, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The Hydra was defeated. Its reign of terror ended. Hercules retrieved some of the Hydra's venom, carefully collecting it in a jar. He dipped his arrows in the deadly substance, knowing they would be invaluable in future battles. As they left the swamp, the first rays of dawn pierced the mist, bathing the landscape in a golden light. Hercules placed a hand on Iolaus' shoulder, his expression one of pride and gratitude. "You've done well, Iolaus," he said. "This victory is as much yours as it is mine." When they returned to Mycenae, Hercules presented the news of his triumph to the heralds. Though the people marveled at his feat, Eurystheus dismissed the labor as invalid, claiming that Iolaus' assistance had disqualified him. But Hercules cared little for the king's pettiness. He had faced a monster born of the gods themselves and prevailed. More than that, he had proven that even the most insurmountable challenges could be overcome with courage, ingenuity, and the support of those he trusted. With the Hydra defeated, Hercules prepared himself for the next labor, knowing that his journey was far from over.